The emergency beacon screamed across every human frequency simultaneously. Captain Derek Hayes gripped his command chair as the message played for the third time in 10 minutes. The Galactic Council had just declared Earth's mining operations in the Kepler Belt illegal, effective immediately. 40,000 human workers had 6 hours to evacuate or face military consequences. Commander Lisa Chang turned from her tactical display, her face pale. The Council fleet was already moving into position, 300 warships forming a blockade around humanity's most productive resource zone. 50 years of development, trillions in infrastructure, and the livelihoods of millions back on Earth, all dismissed with a single decree. Derek had watched the Council slowly tighten restrictions on human expansion for 2 decades. First, they limited colony permits. Then they imposed crushing tariffs on human trade goods. Every attempt at diplomacy met with condescension and delays. The Council treated humanity like children who needed constant supervision, despite humans proving themselves capable time and again. The message from Earth Command came through on the secure channel. Admiral Patricia Stone's voice was steady but edged with cold fury. Humanity had tried patience. They had negotiated in good faith, accepted compromises, and swallowed insults. The Council mistook restraint for weakness. They forgot that humans had clawed their way up from a radioactive homeworld, survived 3 extinction-level events, and built a spacefaring civilization in less than 2 centuries. Stone's orders were clear and simple. Hold the line. Reinforcements were already jumping through hyperspace. The Council wanted humanity to back down, to accept their place as a junior species in the galactic hierarchy. But Earth had decided that the time for submission was over. Derek watched his tactical display light up with new contacts. Human vessels were emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. Colony defense ships, corporate security fleets, and independent freighters armed to the teeth. They had all received the same call. The Council fleet outnumbered them 5-1, but numbers only told part of the story. The Council species had enjoyed peace for 6,000 years. Their military vessels were designed for show and intimidation. Human ships were built by a species that had never stopped fighting, first themselves, then their environment, then the hostile universe that tried repeatedly to kill them. Every human vessel carried weapons designed to crack planets and shields that could withstand solar flares. The Council's lead vessel transmitted a warning: evacuate immediately or face destruction. Derek looked at his crew, saw the determination in their eyes, and opened a channel to the entire human fleet. His response was broadcast on every frequency, ensuring the Council and every species in the galaxy would hear it clearly. Humanity was done asking for permission. They were done accepting scraps and insults. The Council had pushed too far, and they were about to learn why picking a fight with humanity was a catastrophic mistake. Derek gave the order his species had been waiting decades to hear. All ships, battle stations, fire at will. The first volley from the human fleet turned space into a light show of destruction. Railgun slugs traveling at .7 light speed punched through Council shields like they were tissue paper. The elegant crystalline hulls that the Council species prided themselves on shattered spectacularly, spilling atmosphere and bodies into the void. Within 90 seconds, 30 Council vessels were drifting wrecks. Lieutenant Jake Morrison called out target coordinates from his weapons station. The Council had arranged their fleet in a ceremonial formation, prioritizing aesthetics over tactical positioning. It made them perfect targets. Human missiles, each carrying enough antimatter to vaporize a small moon, found their marks with ruthless efficiency. The Council fleet finally began to react, but their response was clumsy and panicked. They had protocols designed for pirates and minor disputes, not for a peer-level engagement against a species that treated war as a science. Their energy weapons, beautiful cascades of exotic particles, dissipated harmlessly against human shield technology stolen and improved from a dozen conquered alien threats. Commander Chang monitored the tactical feed and reported what everyone already knew. The Council was trying to retreat, but human ships had already positioned themselves to cut off escape routes. Admiral Stone had planned this engagement for years, running simulations and war games during every moment the diplomats wasted time at peace conferences. The Council thought they controlled the galaxy through ancient authority. Humans controlled it through superior firepower and the will to use it. A priority transmission came through from one of the Council vessels. Ambassador Trell, a pompous insectoid who had personally signed the evacuation order, was requesting immediate negotiations. His translator struggled to convey his panic as he babbled about misunderstandings and the possibility of diplomatic solutions. Derek deleted the message without responding. The time for talking had passed the moment the Council threatened human lives. Fighter craft launched from human carriers, small, angular vessels piloted by men and women who trained in simulators replicating every possible combat scenario. They swarmed Council cruisers, targeting weapon systems and propulsion units with surgical precision. Each pilot knew that back home, families watched the live feeds, holding their breath as humanity finally stopped apologizing for existing. The battle lasted 18 minutes from first shot to final casualty. 273 Council ships destroyed or disabled. Human casualties numbered 47, mostly from a single vessel that took a lucky hit to its reactor core. The Kepler belt remained firmly in human hands, and the Council's authority lay shattered among the debris. But Derek knew this was just the beginning. Earth Command was already broadcasting the engagement footage across the entire galactic network. Every species in Council space was watching humanity's statement written in fire and wreckage. The message was unmistakable. Push humanity, and humanity pushes back harder. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the main view screen. She looked tired, but satisfied. Orders were coming through for every human ship in the galaxy. No longer would they defer to Council authority. No longer would they accept restricted trade routes or inflated docking fees. Humanity was claiming its place at the table, and they were doing it with their guns already drawn. The diplomatic corps back on Earth would spend the next weeks issuing statements about proportional responses and legitimate defense. But everyone knew the truth. This was a revolution, and revolutions were never polite. More human ships continued to arrive, called in from every corner of human space. Mining vessels, exploration craft, and military dreadnoughts that had been secretly constructed in violation of Council treaties. The Admiralty had been preparing for this day, stockpiling weapons and training crews while diplomats bought them time with endless negotiations that went nowhere. Derek received reports from other sectors. Human fleets were engaging Council forces at a dozen contested locations simultaneously. Every border dispute, every trade conflict, every insult that humanity had endured for decades was being settled at once. The Council had assumed their numerical superiority, and ancient technology would intimidate the young species into compliance. They were learning their fatal error in real time. Lieutenant Morrison pulled up casualty reports from the Council fleet. The numbers were staggering, but Derek felt no guilt. These were the same species that had watched human colony ships turned away from habitable worlds, forcing settlers into marginal systems where half died in the first winter. These were the species that laughed when human trade vessels were seized for minor permit violations, while their own pirates operated with impunity. The Council chamber on their capital world would be in chaos right now. Their military commanders were realizing that 6,000 years of peace had left them soft and unprepared. Their weapons were outdated, their tactics were predictable, and their warriors had no stomach for real combat against an enemy that fought back with teeth bared and claws extended. Commander Chang reported another incoming Council transmission. This one came directly from the Council Supreme, the highest authority in their government. Derek almost ignored it, but curiosity made him accept. The Supreme's voice quavered as it spoke of ancient laws and protocols for conflict resolution. Derek's response was brief and brutal. Humanity recognized no authority but its own. The Council could adapt to the new reality or be swept away by it. 3 days after the Kepler Belt engagement, human forces controlled 17 major systems that the Council had classified as restricted zones. Colonies that had struggled under Council sanctions were now receiving supply ships openly, their captains daring anyone to stop them. Nobody did. The Council fleet was in complete disarray, with ships deserting their posts as crews realized their governments had sent them to die for political theater. Captain Rachel Foster commanded the heavy cruiser Defiant, leading a task force toward the Centauri Junction, the largest trade hub in the sector. For 30 years, Council regulations had strangled human commerce through that station, imposing fees and inspections designed to make human goods non-competitive. The station administrator, a reptilian named Vex, had personally humiliated human traders, confiscating entire cargoes on invented technicalities. Rachel's orders were straightforward: take control of the station and restore free trade. Resistance was expected but not respected. The Defiant emerged from hyperspace with guns already hot, its weapons locked on the station's defensive platforms. Her message to Vex was simple: stand down or be destroyed. The administrator chose poorly, activating the station's weapons and calling for Council reinforcements. The defensive platforms lasted 90 seconds. Human missiles reduced them to expanding clouds of metallic vapor, while railgun fire cut through the station's shields. Rachel gave the civilian population time to evacuate to the inner sections before her Marines launched. 300 humans in powered armor hit the station from 6 entry points simultaneously, their assault coordinated with brutal efficiency. The station's security force, composed of various Council species, surrendered almost immediately. They were security guards, not soldiers, and had no training for combat against humans who treated warfare as an art form. The Marines moved through the station like a tide, securing critical systems and rounding up administrators who had spent decades making human lives miserable. Vex tried to hide in his private quarters, surrounded by the wealth he had extracted from illegal fees and confiscations. Lieutenant Kevin Brooks found him cowering behind his desk, still clutching his ceremonial badge of authority. The administrator was detained along with his entire corrupt staff, their records seized as evidence of systematic abuse that the Council had either endorsed or ignored. Within 6 hours, Centauri Junction was under human control. Rachel transmitted new station regulations across the network. All species were welcome to trade freely. Fees would be fair and transparent. Inspections would follow universal standards, not arbitrary Council mandates. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Merchant vessels from a dozen species that had also suffered under Council restrictions flooded the station with requests for docking permission. Back on Earth, President Karen Mitchell addressed a joint session of the World Congress. The chamber was packed with representatives who had spent careers arguing over humanity's proper place in galactic society. Mitchell's speech was short and fierce. Humanity had tried patience, tried diplomacy, tried compromise. The Council repaid every gesture of goodwill with contempt. Now humanity was taking what it deserved through strength, and they would not apologize for it. The President announced the formation of the Human Defense Coalition, a military alliance that consolidated all human forces under a unified command. Admiral Stone was named Supreme Commander, with authority to prosecute the conflict to its conclusion. Funding packages passed within hours, redirecting massive resources to military production. Shipyards across human space began working triple shifts, building warships designed specifically to counter Council technology. Intelligence reports flooded in from human agents embedded throughout Council space. The reports painted a picture of an empire in collapse. Member species were questioning Council leadership openly. Trade routes were breaking down as merchants refused to follow regulations that humans now ignored with impunity. Dozens of species that had chafed under Council control for centuries saw humanity's rebellion as an opportunity for their own freedom. General Brandon Cole commanded ground forces preparing for potential planetary assaults. The Council controlled 30 core worlds that had never faced invasion in recorded history. Their populations enjoyed peace and prosperity built on the backs of subjugated junior species. Brandon's troops trained for urban combat and occupation, preparing to bring war to populations that had forgotten what war looked like. Diplomatic channels exploded with activity as species tried to position themselves for the new order. Some offered humanity alliances, hoping to benefit from the changing power structure. Others condemned human aggression while quietly withdrawing support from the Council. A few species, old enemies of the Council with long memories, reached out with offers of technology and strategic intelligence. Commander Lisa Chang analyzed the geopolitical shifts from her station aboard the newly designated flagship Resolution. The Council's monolithic control was fracturing faster than anyone had predicted. Without their military supremacy, they had nothing to offer member species except tradition and empty promises. Humans offered something revolutionary, a galaxy where merit mattered more than ancient hierarchies, where trade was free and species determined their own destinies. The Council attempted to rally support by painting humanity as warmongers and barbarians. Their propaganda broadcasts showed footage of destroyed ships and occupied stations, warning that human aggression threatened galactic stability. The campaign backfired spectacularly. Every species saw the footage and realized the same thing. The Council was vulnerable, and the humans were winning. Station commanders across human space reported unprecedented cooperation with non-Council species. Merchants who had lost fortunes to Council corruption offered their services to human logistics operations. Scientists from restricted species volunteered their knowledge, eager to work with humans who treated them as equals rather than inferiors. The coalition was growing beyond humanity, becoming something the Council feared most, a genuine alternative to their authority. 2 weeks into the conflict, Admiral Stone authorized Operation Reckoning. Human fleets would strike at 3 Council core worlds simultaneously, demonstrating that no territory was safe from retaliation. The targets were carefully chosen, industrial centers that supplied the Council military, not civilian population centers. Humanity wanted to win the war, not commit genocide, but the Council needed to understand that their heartland was no longer protected by distance or tradition. Commander Jake Morrison led the assault on Nexus Prime, the Council's primary shipbuilding facility. The system defenses were formidable, layered shields and weapon platforms designed to resist any attack. But the designers had assumed attackers would follow traditional engagement patterns, approaching slowly and announcing intentions. Human doctrine was simpler. Hit hard, hit fast, and never give the enemy time to adapt. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace inside the defensive perimeter, a jump that required insane precision and courage. 3 ships collided with defense platforms, sacrificing themselves to open holes in the network. The rest poured through like water through cracks, their weapons already firing at predetermined targets. Nexus Prime's orbital shipyards, massive structures where Council cruisers were assembled, erupted in cascading explosions. General Brandon Cole's Marines boarded the yards through the chaos, securing critical infrastructure before it could be destroyed by desperate defenders. The goal was not just destruction but capture. Human engineers wanted those facilities intact. their technology and manufacturing capabilities ready for analysis and exploitation. Every council advantage needed to be understood, copied, and improved upon. Meanwhile, Captain Rachel Foster's task force hit the mining world of Terragrav, source of exotic materials essential for Council shield technology. The planet's surface defenses were minimal because the Council never imagined anyone would dare attack so deep into their territory. Rachel's bombardment was surgical, taking out refineries and processing plants while leaving the mines themselves intact. Within hours, human occupation forces were landing and securing facilities that represented a choke point in Council military production. The third target was the diplomatic hub of Concordia Station, where Council ambassadors from 300 species conducted the endless negotiations that maintained their empire. Captain Daniel Rivers commanded the assault, knowing that success meant capturing the Council's entire diplomatic apparatus. The station's token defense force surrendered without firing a shot, its commander wise enough to recognize the futility of resistance. Daniel's troops seized records and communication archives that documented decades of Council corruption. Files revealed bribes paid to suppress upstart species, trade deals that funneled wealth to Council elites, and military operations disguised as peacekeeping missions. The evidence confirmed what humanity had suspected. The Council maintained power through systematic exploitation and manipulation, not through legitimate governance. President Mitchell authorized the release of selected documents to the Galactic Network. The revelations sparked outrage across hundreds of worlds. Species that had supported the Council out of loyalty or fear began questioning everything they had been told. Public protests erupted on Council core worlds as their own populations learned how their government operated. The war was becoming something the Council could not win, a moral crusade with humanity cast as liberators rather than invaders. The Council Supreme convened an emergency session, finally understanding the catastrophe unfolding around them. Their military was shattered, their economy was collapsing, and their political authority was evaporating. Desperate, they authorized the use of ancient weapons that had been banned for 3,000 years, planet-killing devices that could render worlds uninhabitable through radioactive contamination. Intelligence assets warned Earth Command within hours. Admiral Stone immediately escalated the response, authorizing preemptive strikes on every facility where the forbidden weapons were stored. Human Special Forces teams, trained for operations in hostile environments, infiltrated Council military bases across 6 systems. Their missions were executed with terrifying efficiency, destroying weapon stockpiles before they could be deployed. One team, led by Lieutenant Sarah Blake, penetrated the vault on Obsidian Station where the Council stored its most dangerous weapons. Her squad fought through automated defenses and desperate security forces to reach the storage chamber. The devices they found were horrifying, capable of genocide on a planetary scale. Sarah armed demolition charges while her team held the entrance against counterattacks that grew increasingly fierce as Council forces realized what was happening. The explosion that consumed Obsidian Station could be seen from 3 systems away. Sarah and her team died in the blast, but they prevented the Council from turning the conflict into an extinction war. Earth Command declared them heroes and named a new class of warships in their honor. More importantly, their sacrifice sent an unmistakable message. Humanity would accept battle, but they would not tolerate atrocities. The Council's attempt to use forbidden weapons backfired completely. Species that had remained neutral now openly supported humanity. Ancient allies abandoned the Council, unwilling to be associated with governments willing to commit genocide rather than accept defeat. Even Council core worlds saw protests demanding their leader's resignation. Fleet Admiral Patricia Stone prepared for the final phase of operations. The Council capital world of Archon Prime remained untouched, its orbital defenses intact, and its population of 12 billion still believing in their government's invincibility. Stone assembled the largest human fleet ever gathered, 600 warships, 2,000 support vessels, and enough firepower to crack continents. Her orders from Earth were clear. Force the Council to surrender unconditionally, and do it without unnecessary bloodshed. The human fleet arrived at Archon Prime in full battle formation, their arrival calculated to coincide with the planet's morning cycle when maximum populations would witness it. Stone broadcast her terms on every frequency. The Council government would dissolve, war crimes trials would be held for officials who authorized atrocities, and a new galactic organization would be established based on equality between species. The Council had 48 hours to comply or face bombardment. The Council Supreme initially rejected the terms, calling them barbaric and illegal under galactic law. Stone's response was broadcast live across the galaxy. Humanity no longer recognized laws written by tyrants to protect their tyranny. The Council had 47 hours remaining. Panic gripped Archon Prime as the deadline approached. Citizens who had never questioned their government's benevolence suddenly faced the reality that their leaders had provoked a war they could not win. Protests filled the streets demanding the Council step down rather than sacrifice billions for pride. The planet's military commanders privately contacted Admiral Stone, indicating they would not follow orders to fight a battle that would only result in civilian casualties. With 12 hours remaining, the Council Supreme appeared on galactic broadcasts looking defeated and ancient. The Supreme announced the Council's unconditional surrender and the dissolution of their government, effective immediately. The speech lasted 3 minutes and contained no excuses or justifications. The empire that had controlled the galaxy for 6,000 years ended with a whimper, its leaders finally understanding they were obsolete. Human Marines landed on Archon Prime not as conquerors but as peacekeepers. General Brandon Cole personally oversaw the transition, ensuring that order was maintained while the population adjusted to their new reality. War crimes investigators began cataloging evidence for trials that would hold Council leaders accountable for decades of abuse. The process would take years, but humanity was committed to justice, not revenge. Captain Derek Hayes, who had fired the first shots in the Kepler Belt, was assigned to oversee the establishment of the new galactic government. Representatives from 200 species gathered on neutral ground to draft a charter that would replace Council authority. The debates were fierce, with species arguing over representation, voting procedures, and enforcement mechanisms. But everyone agreed on the fundamental principle: no species would dominate another, and all would have equal voice in galactic affairs. The new organization was named the Federation of Free Worlds, and its charter reflected lessons learned from both Council tyranny and human democratic traditions. Military force would be used only for collective defense, never for oppression. Trade would be free and fair, with disputes resolved through arbitration rather than political leverage. Member species would retain sovereignty over their internal affairs while contributing to collective security and prosperity. President Karen Mitchell addressed the Federation's inaugural assembly, speaking not as humanity's leader but as one voice among equals. She acknowledged the violence that brought them to this moment, but argued it was necessary to break chains that diplomacy could never remove. The galaxy had a chance to build something better, and humanity would work alongside everyone to make it succeed. Admiral Stone retired from military service after the treaties were signed, her final act recommending massive demilitarization now that peace was assured. Human shipyards began converting military vessels to civilian use, their weapons removed and their holds repurposed for cargo and exploration. The warriors who had won the war now focused on winning the peace through trade, science, and cultural exchange. Commander Lisa Chang took command of the exploration initiative, leading fleets into uncharted regions where Council restrictions had prevented expansion. Her ships discovered habitable worlds, ancient ruins, and mysteries that had been ignored for millennia. The galaxy was larger and stranger than the Council had ever acknowledged, and humanity was eager to explore it alongside their new allies. Not everyone accepted the new order peacefully. Remnants of Council loyalists launched guerrilla attacks and terrorism, trying to destabilize the Federation and restore the old hierarchy. But their efforts found little support among populations that remembered Council corruption. Human security forces working with coalition partners systematically dismantled the resistance networks while offering amnesty to followers and trials for leaders. 5 years after the Kepler Belt engagement, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Trade between species had increased tenfold without Council restrictions. Scientific cooperation produced breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Colony worlds that had struggled under sanctions now thrived as independent systems. The Federation grew to include 400 species, each contributing their unique strengths to collective prosperity. Captain Derek Hayes stood on the observation deck of Federation Station, the new capital built in neutral space between major systems. Ships from 100 species docked alongside human vessels, their crews mingling freely in markets and social spaces. Children of different species played together in parks designed for multiple biologies. The galaxy had moved beyond the rigid hierarchies that had defined it for millennia. He received a message from Jake Morrison, now an instructor at the new Federation Military Academy, where humans trained alongside alien species in modern warfare and peacekeeping. Morrison reported that their students were learning not just tactics and strategy, but also the principles of restraint and proportionality. The galaxy still needed warriors, but it needed warriors who understood that military force served political and ethical goals, not the other way around. Derek smiled and filed the message, turning his attention back to the traffic flowing past the station. The Council had pushed too far, and humanity had pushed back hard enough to shatter an ancient order. But the real victory was not military conquest. It was proving that a better galaxy was possible, one where strength served justice and freedom rather than domination. Humanity had earned its place, not by being the strongest, but by showing everyone that strength without wisdom was tyranny, and that a truly civilized galaxy had room for all species to thrive as equals.